Hello, Holinka.
Hello.
Oh, I think your volume is coming in good. Just the only thing I'm going to look at chat for is make sure that the volume is good. I think it is.
Okay.
But yes. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm so
Yeah.
happy to be here. I've got my Venruki t-shirt on. You can't see it, but I did tweet it out just to let you know I'm a big fan.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm a big fan as well. And I just want to say, from me and behalf of the PvP community, really, really happy that you're here and you have an opportunity to sit down, or we have an opportunity to kind of sit down and ask you some questions. I'm really excited about it. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, man, absolutely.
All right. Well, I mean, we can kind of just jump into it. We got about an hour here. And also, before we start this, I just want to give a shout out to the PvP with the devs that's happening right after this. So if you guys haven't downloaded the PTR, you should go do that. But yes, the first thing, I mean, kind of the major change or not change, but one of the major updates, I guess we're getting in 9.1 is kind of an overhaul of the PvP talents. And this is something, it hasn't happened in a while, like little tweaks here and there, but this is like quite a significant overhaul. And I wanted to ask if you guys had any like specific theme in mind or like a goal when updating these talents. Was there any like specific goal you guys had?
Yeah, for sure. There were a couple goals, right? Like when we added PvP talents back in Legion, and the story there was a bit of like there were a lot of buttons in the game and we wanted to reduce them, but there was a lot of things that were really important to PvP. There was a lot of like mechanics that were worked well in PvP, but not necessarily PvE. And we felt like those abilities needed a place to live.
Okay.
We were also building a progression system at the time. But in general, we feel like there are like PvP is a very different game from PvE in the sense that there are things that matter a lot more in terms of like positioning, area denial, like counterplay of certain buffs, debuffs, that there's a cool design space there that we can work with PvP talents that, we can kind of seclude from the rest of the game. So we don't have to, we can go wild a little bit in the PvP design space, or PvP talent design space. And so our goal here was to kind of freshen that up because as in PvP in arena, in order for the game to feel fresh, like the meta has to change pretty importantly. And in order for that to happen, classes have to change to some degree. And that happens like on an expansion flip, 7.0, 8.0, 9.0, they come out and, we had covenant abilities, we had soul binds, Azerite traits go away. Essences go away, all those things. Then all of a sudden the meta is very different, like an expansion launch. So things feel fresh for a while. It feels like we got to figure out what's strong, what's not strong. People got to play around it, and so that feels like fresh content for like the arena player, and even in some ways for the battleground player. But now we come to like a .1 patch, and that is mostly like that amount of radical change that you see in expansion is it's over, it's done, right? And so we feel like this is a good time to now circle back and do a big PvP talent change. And we have a couple, goals there. For one thing, we want to kind of just change things up and make people have new toys, new pieces of the puzzle, meta puzzle to kind of figure out. But also it's a chance for us to like, this system is a system that choice is an important part. I mean, I often see people say like, give me a fourth slot, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Part of this is we want 3 slots, right? We want these choices to be important. Adding 3 more buttons to your bar can be a lot of headspace for people, take up a lot of brain space for people. And so we want those choices to be compelling. And so we want to address things like talents that aren't interesting, talents that feel mandatory, talents that, are doing too well, and we need to, figure out a better way to handle it. So that's kind of what our goal was to shake things up a bit, provide new abilities, new spells, new content, essentially, for like your arena or battleground player, and to try to address issues as much as we could, like balance issues as much as we could.
I like that. I like the idea that there's not like a single honor talent that is like you're going to be locking in every single time. And honestly, looking at the PvP talents, it feels like 9.1 could be like more meta defining and change things up even more than like going into Shadowlands, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I mean, and for what it's worth, it took, this was I know sometimes people are like, what does PvP get? And it's tough when you look in the lens of a class, and there are 12 classes, there are 36 specs. And if you primarily focus on one of those, you may feel like this one spec didn't get that much, but you have to think of like the amount of work we do kind of gets multiplied by 12 or 36. And we put a lot of time and effort into making these PvP talents and refreshing them. A significant number of people were working on them over the last patch cycle. So it is, I'm glad to hear that it feels like, yeah, this is going to be, a radical change
Oh,
to the meta,
definitely.
and the game will feel different, because that was certainly one of the things we were going for.
Cool. Yeah. Also, one of just to kind of finish up with PvP talents,
Yeah.
another theme that I kind of noticed was a lot of healing reduction was added. We even saw like healing reduction for some healers. I believe druids with their cyclone, they have a way to reduce healing, and shamans with their unleash shield. So I'm pretty sure like almost. I don't want to say all specs, but a significant number of specs actually have healing reduction. Now, what was kind of the purpose or the goal of adding that?
Yeah, I think largely to make the game more offensive and less defensive. I think in general, the game plays better. I would say in general, games play better when offensive strategies are the dominant strategies. When people, like we reward aggression, and at times, healing can be too strong. Like we want a world where, you're in a 3v3 and the healer, he or she is kind of playing goaltender almost, right, against the other team, like trying to stop kill windows and whatnot. But over time, they wear down. And that's kind of what these are built. A lot of these talents are built towards. Is just bringing, increasing the pressure on healers a little bit, and making them, increasing the, effect of sustained damage on them, so that they feel like, people are going to die in a pretty good amount of time.
Cool.
I would say, our targets, our rough targets for an arena match, like a threes, would be somewhere in the 3 to 7, range, 3 to 7 minute range. And we see that generally, in lower ratings, things, below 2000, or even quite honestly as high as 2200 or 2400. Like, the games are not super long. I know we all watch esports, and we see the AWC, and we see the very best players in the world who are very good at shutting each other down. And sometimes those matches can go a bit longer. But generally, we shoot for the matches to be somewhere in the 3 to 5 minute range. So this is kind of an effort towards that.
Okay, cool. I definitely have a few more questions about those topics in a little bit.
Keep going.
Okay, we can actually just dive into that right now if you want. So
whatever.
Yeah, no, let's do that. We might as well while we're on the topic. So I have one of the things. So I sent out a tweet. I'm sure you saw it, asking kind of the community the things that they wanted to discuss and talk about, and kind of on the topic of healing. I in Shadowlands, off healing seems like it's the highest it's really ever been. So there's a few outliers. Actually, there's quite a few outliers, like Word of Glory example for Retribution Paladins. I don't want a Retribution Paladins or hybrids to think I'm picking on them, because may just have like Triune Berry, which is also really, really good. But there's a lot of heals in the game that can bring someone from basically like 20% to 100% really rapidly, and in a lot of cases they don't have a large cost on them, and things like this can really act to like kind of prolong the game. Is there any thoughts about kind of looking at some of those things, like these defensive abilities and heals that can quickly turn around a game from non-healing classes?
Yes, I think there's a bit of a balance that we have to, a line we have to toe, of like, one, off healing feeling like a cool and powerful utility that you bring to your teammates, right? And two, if like a hybrid spec relies on those healing spells as part of their defensive kit.
Yeah,
those are some things we have to keep in mind. But yeah, certainly acknowledge that, like, when you're able to lock down the healer, and then the DPS, you don't have crowd control, starts bombing some huge heals that shuts the whole kill window down, like that's a problem. So yeah, I think we are going to look at that over the next few weeks. We've talked about off healing and ways to rein it in. So yep, that is definitely something we're looking at, and definitely something I'm concerned about. I think in general, like I said, and I just say it to the team all the time, like people got to die.
Yeah.
People got to die in arena. People got to die in BGs. We would rather be in a world that's too lethal than not lethal enough. So, yep, we're going to continue to keep trying to drive the game towards lethality and towards people dying. So, spells on healers, spells on hybrids, all that is something we're going to keep looking at.
Cool. I'm really excited to hear that. And kind of on that topic, once again, since I feel like we're discussing this, I might as well just ask you right now. Another kind of thing we saw, I believe we started seeing it in Battle for Azeroth primarily, and then it's happened in Shadowlands quite a bit as well, is like the idea of these really low risk, high reward payoffs. So a lot of like passive defensive cooldowns that, come in the form of conduits, or they come in the form of your covenant abilities or covenant traits, and these things that can keep you alive. And I think the reason people get frustrated by them is because there's essentially no counterplay to them. So like when you are going for those kill windows, you are going for those burst windows, you'll see a druid just automatically use frenzied regeneration, and the healing is really powerful for things like that and frictionless coding. And in 9.1, they're actually, it seems like a bunch more of these are being added. Do you feel like the addition of even more of these is going to kind of undermine the goal of the games being faster?
Yeah, I'm definitely worried about that. And I think I should also address for the hybrid healing, and for this problem that you're talking about now, we will mostly lean on malting them down. So, making PvP specific reductions to them that really only apply in PvP. And yeah, we're going to do a pass on that. We're kind of in the stages right now where we're kind of shifting our attention more towards tuning, as the tuning is things we can do later in the patch cycle. So yep, that is definitely something I want. Like you mentioned, Triune Ward. That was the one I know that was, really strengthened up mage barriers this past season. But yeah, a lot of the soul binds. It was easier in BFA because we had this kind of whole tier of passive healing traits, and so it was very easy for us to like blanket say, hey, all of these traits are reduced by like 75% because we just want the damage to go up. And I feel like even though it wasn't well spelled out in game, like to have this knowledge that in general this tier is reduced in PvP was good, a lot easier. It's harder with the soul binds because now we're talking about and even some conduits or some legendaries, because so there's a little bit of cherry picking here. Like there's a little bit of hit this one, hit that one, not this one, and so that's kind of what my concern is. So yeah. We'll be talking about them, going over the ones that are the most problematic, and doing a PvP multi pass on them. Cool.
I mean, that all sounds awesome. So, thanks for talking to us about that one. And yeah, I know you've done it in the past where you multiply the ones that are, the particular offenders down. So I think that could definitely help. But the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is probably the number one request, was gearing. And actually gearing, we'll talk about kind of the beginning of Shadowlands. So gearing in Shadowlands, there was a lot of improvements in my mind over Battle for Azeroth. So the fact that the Honor vendor came in, as well as the Conquest vendor, and kind of giving PvPers control over the gear that they were getting. I feel like for the most part, at least at the beginning of the expansion, that worked out really well. Were you guys happy with how it ended up doing?
Yeah, I think, and as this conversation goes, I would say, yeah, I think the current solution works really well for the start of the season when everybody is kind of growing at the same rate, right? Like everybody's getting their Conquest gear, kind of, a piece or two at a time each week, and upgrading them, that power differential is not so significant. And so yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I think, as we even maybe discuss the downsides of the current system, like I think one thing we always want to reinforce is that PvP is not an island, right? Like it's a part of the broader RPG that is World of Warcraft. And as such, when we design a gearing system for PvP, we also have to keep in mind what is going on for the rest of the game, create things, that attract players to PvP that aren't where PvP isn't necessarily their primary focus,
Yeah.
but offer some things that seem attractive to them. So yeah, I think we settled on something that has a lot of potential, and I'm happy to have returned to a world where people are kind of hanging around the vendor, whether it be the honor vendor or the conquest vendor, and then um, kind of going queuing up for a battleground or arena, getting their points, buying their gear, going to the vendor, left shift clicking on all of it to see what the set looks like. Those are all things I remember doing for a long time, and I'm glad that we returned to it.
Great. I'm just making sure. Just gonna turn you up a little bit. It's all good. But yeah, I 100% agree. The PvP vendor has been really, really great so far. And it's like you kind of said at the start of the expansion, it felt really, really good. Like basically, your experience was you slowly acquired your honor gear until like you were capped on renown, and then as you slowly gained renown over like the weeks and months, you were able to upgrade that gear slowly, and it was a very gradual process, and it felt very fluid. But I think that the big difficulty players have is once people are geared, if you're like a new player coming into PvP, that's when like this mountain kind of seems insurmountable, where you have to get your honor gear and rank it up, 7 times, which is quite a bit of honor, and get your conquest gear and use honor to upgrade that. People are kind of wondering if there's any intention or thought about adding like more catch up to gearing later on in the season. So like if you are someone who's playing alt, or you're coming into the season a little bit later, you could catch up your gear a bit faster and be on more of an even playing field.
Yeah, so some things to think about or there I want to put out there. So one,
Sure.
like I totally agree that this is a problem. If you're someone coming in the middle season, or even like let's say this point of the season, and you're like butting up against the next rating tier, it can feel difficult to beat that team who is fully decked out in conquest gear that has been upgraded and is 6 item levels higher than you. That can be a significant thing to overcome. However, I do think there's value in this item level chase, like this idea of I want to hit the next tier because the honor gear, or not, excuse me, the honor gear, but the gear upgrades, the conquest gear, I can improve it. It can be better. It can be higher. So we like that idea, but acknowledge that yeah, mid to late season, it's really tough as an alt to try and overcome that gap. And that's a problem. Since I think that's primarily a mid-season, late season problem, we weren't able to prioritize addressing it right for 9.1 launch, but it's going to be a goal for us like in the mid patch, like a 9.15 patch or something. And our initial thoughts are to do more tiers, kind of more steps. Because as I said, I think 6 item levels could be a lot to overcome, but perhaps 3 is not so bad.
Okay.
So if the upgrade tiers were more along the lines of 3, and perhaps the honor was adjusted accordingly,
Okay.
the honor 2 upgrade was adjusted accordingly. I'm not going to just make people
Grind
twice as much honor.
Thank goodness.
Then it would hurt a little bit less. But yeah, like early season, I've got that guy's got 2 pieces of conquest gear. I've got 2 pieces of conquest gear. It's 6 item levels higher. I don't think those 2 pieces are super make or break. Yeah, they have an advantage. That's part of it. That's part of the RPG PvP that we're playing here. But I don't necessarily think like at 3 item levels that, later in the season that would be too hard to overcome. Now, in terms of just rates of like conquest acquisition and honor acquisition, yeah, that's something we'll have to look at. I'm on one hand, like the fact that the cap. I mean, you remember the days when there was no catch up cap, right? Remember, there was. It used to just be like you're earning 2,000 conquest a week, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, you miss a week, you're kind of hosed, and
Mm-hmm.
it can be pretty nice to just have this gigantic conquest bar that you can work through right now and gain that gear pretty quickly. But I understand that, like, yeah, you feel like you're at a competitive disadvantage. We'll look at that. We were exploring some ideas about like a little bit of an amp for your conquest earned. I think the thing is, I would never want to make it such that, oh hey, instead of having to earn 27,000 conquest, you only have to earn 13,000 conquest, you know, to outfit yourself. I just think that is a little bit too much. But perhaps getting you started, we could find some ways to get you started a little easier later in the season. But again, I don't want to. I don't think it's, you know, smart for us to totally undercut the power progression of characters in such a way. I think it's still important for players to feel like they have to earn the gear on the characters, and those characters progress and become more powerful from playing the game. Like that's just kind of one of the underpinnings of playing a game like this.
Yeah, definitely. You're right. I remember the early days where, you know, if you fell behind, you basically had to go through the subsequent weeks to catch up. But I also remember the days of I think it was Warlords where there was like there was ways to get conquest quicker, like tokens you could buy from players on the auction house, stuff like that. So if you were really behind, you could put resources into that. And I wonder if almost something like a bonus conquest weekend or something like that, like similar to How Do We See to Honor, could help on like those long grinds.
Yeah, I think so. I think those are some good ideas. And once again, I think we can do that some sort of thing more in like a 915 than 9-1, because I think the problem will be more prevalent at that point
Yeah.
than it is like, you know, when 9-1 launches. I don't think anyone's going to have this concern so much. It's just a very big concern like in this last month or two, as the season has been longer than intended, that players feel this way.
Yeah. I think a lot of the kind of frustrations around gearing kind of stem from people just getting into it as well, and
Hmm.
how big of a difference in your power there is. So if you're, you know, someone who's just starting out, let's say you got your full honor set, you're, you know, 197, maybe a little bit higher from your legendary, and you jump into arenas and you're kind of trying to climb to that first hurdle, that 1400, you can
Hmm.
find yourself in situations where you're playing against, you know, players that maybe
Hmm.
got their gear from rated battlegrounds and they're, you
Hmm.
know, full 227. And in
Hmm.
situations like that, I mean, you know, a couple item levels isn't that big of a deal, but when it's like, you know, 30 plus item level difference, it almost feels insurmountable for these players.
Totally. Yeah, I looked into that problem a good amount with our data scientists to like kind of investigate like how often was this happening, like how often were the people with higher gear coming down into these lower brackets. And you know, it definitely seems that our, especially particularly in 2v2, our MMR distribution this season was definitely skewed more towards you know, sub 1500 ratings than we normally are used to. Um, this is something we're investigating. It was largely driven by just the number of matches that happened, which was very high, um, like historically high. Largely, I think, motivated by the rewards that were available. You know, the item level of the rewards you could get from PvP were very attractive to people. It was a deterministic way to get some gear, and so a lot of people are participating. So, you know, like kind of when you're saying that there are people who are in this bracket of 1400 at high gear, that was just a general issue that we saw,
Okay.
um, and especially for 2v2 and 3v3. And so we're, you know, as we go from one season to the other season, we renormalize the MMR curve, which is, I know sounds very jargony, but basically on season rollover, we shift our MMR curve back. So people's MMR gets adjusted just so that it's kind of fitting the curve as it should be. So next season, we should see a better distribution of ratings, and hopefully these situations that you're talking about where like it feels like people at 1400 are really better than they have been in the past, that hopefully will be addressed. But yeah, I understand. Like I said, I think there's our plan mid-season to, make this jump from one tier to the other a little less challenging should hopefully address the problem that you're talking about.
All right.
And then the other thing is, yeah, finding ways to have a little bit of conquest catch up that feels good naturally. I just don't, like I said, once again, broader landscape of the game, want to ensure that we don't, turn the right way for everybody to gear to do RBGs on RBG weekend, and otherwise all activities are a waste of time.
Yep, that makes sense. Maybe the addition of like the item level scaling will kind of help fix that problem as well.
You mean the PvP item level?
Yeah, PvP item level scaling.
Right,
that's
right.
being added in 9.1.
Well, you keep saying the word scaling, and
sorry. I know
it's a sensitive word. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I won't bring it up again. But
we aren't adding We aren't adding any item.
There's item level scaling. The not hidden.
We're just there's PvP item level on the PvP gear, and it increases the item level of your PvP gear. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Yes.
I know people. The word scaling has upset people.
I understand. All right, so we're actually flying through this, so flying through time, so I kind of want to address some of these other issues. Yes. All right, so the next thing I wanted to ask you about was solo queue and LFG, but we can start with solo queue. This is something, there was a big movement within the community talking about it. They wanted it, or a lot of players wanted it, and we didn't really, I don't believe we heard anything back official on the topic, and I was wondering, is this something you guys are still debating? Like, is it being worked on, or is it something that is not really being considered?
I would say, so a couple things. One, I've talked about in a previous interview that was referenced by a Stoops video that was very popular months ago, my interview with Josh actually, and I talked about like the challenges that we have with solo queue arena. So the one that really concerns us most is like there are two rogues, they both queue up, and give me a terrible rogue comp.
A terrible rogue comp. Rogue. I don't know. Guardian Druid.
Okay, yeah. So one guy gets or gal gets rogue Guardian Druid.
Oh, okay. I understand.
And the other one gets RMP, right?
Okay,
and they're both equal rating, and then all of a sudden you're saying like, well, this sucks because this wasn't really a true test of our skill. It was, the matchmaker, screwing up and hosing me. And so that's very different from a game like, Heroes of the Storm or Overwatch, where you can like change heroes on the fly or make adjustments as you as a player. But in World of Warcraft, you pick your character. That character has a lot of natural synergies with other classes and specs. And so that can be a problem. It can be a problem that I'm very worried about. And then players, like, we can do our best to, try to pick good comps for everybody. But, especially as you get up in higher ratings, there are less people. That's just the natural part of how these systems work. And so the choices that the matchmaker will have to be made, plus trying to get you in a game quickly, there's a challenge there.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is one concern that if we come up with a rated solo queue system, I feel like we have to overcome that. I would say we're thinking about it. We have some ideas. I'm being rather non-committal here, but if we do have something, there's some ideas like we'd like to try out in the Brawl system to kind of play out and see, how the format works. So those are some things we're talking about. But if we were to do something like this, you'd probably see it as a Brawl first before you would see us like adding it full on into the game, because when we add a new format into the game, like it's there, it's going to be there for a long time. So we're trying to take our time and do something like right here because I get the complaint. I get that the idea is like, hey, I want to just play some arenas. I like arenas. It's a fun format. And right now, playing skirmish isn't as rewarding for one reason or another. And so that doesn't feel like an option for me. So I think there's the main problem here is I want to get into arenas faster than I'm getting into arenas now. And our hope is by looking at the LFG tool, talking about some of the problems there, which I know you were about to bring up, we can hopefully get players into matches quicker, doing things like trying to find ways to let players browse groups while they list groups, trying to do things like show ratings more explicitly. There are improvements we could make there. I can't promise you when those are going to come out because everything is prioritized against each other, but those are like improving the LFG tool, I think can go a long way to helping this problem. And then hopefully, you can make important social bonds, you can play with your friends or meet new friends. And that is kind of one of the benefits of, pre-mades fighting against pre-mades is people finding each other, creating sticky relationships and then, coming back to each other whenever they want to play the next time.
Okay.
So that's it. But I mean, that's hopefully not too much news, but we're certainly genuinely not dismissing the problem and genuinely looking for solutions to this issue.
I just wanted to quickly touch on a few things you said. So for solo queue, I've heard the idea of, yeah, sometimes you'll get bad comps and, a particular match won't be favored to you, but, the player that's consistent over time, because roughly speaking, you should have as many good matchups as bad matchups, or at least kind of equal to other players. So you'll still end up seeing players go up in rating. So that's kind of the argument that I've heard. And then, I think for the LFG system, the biggest thing you kind of mentioned was being able to do other things while you're listed, including searching for people, because you'll run into situations where like maybe there's a rogue, he wants to play some twos, and he signs up looking for a mage. And then at the same time, a mage signs up, he's looking to play twos, and he's looking for a rogue, and they're both kind of just sitting in limbo where they can't find each other because both of them are listed.
Yep. Nope. That makes sense. That seems like an edge case we should look at. I feel like the existing LFG is built that way primarily for flow reasons, and like in terms of I listed a group, I go back, I've unlisted the group, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a fine case that's being problematic that we should take a look at and try to fix. And I know there's a number. This is a game-wide problem. I mean, the group finder, I don't think it's exclusive to PvP. There's
for sure.
Who are like, hey, I want improvements to the group finder, and we acknowledge that, and we want to improve it. The other, it's a very, very small thing, but I would love people to give it a shot. We did add Conquest to the repeatable version of Skirmish. I don't necessarily expect gladiators to like start queuing Skirmish or anything, but I think for the player who is, just likes grinding Conquest and doesn't necessarily doesn't always want to wait for an LFG. You can hopefully queue some skirmish and slowly grind out your Conquest for the week or something, or at least make some headway on your Conquest cap, and you'll get some of that experience. I think it will be interesting to see how that plays out for some people. If they're just like, no, it was fine. I got all these matches, and sometimes there was wacky comps, and it wasn't a problem for me. But and to your point about like, over number of many matches, like ultimately it'll even out. I agree with you, and I understand that. It has been my experience that applying large numbers to an individual player's experience and saying, yeah, I know you didn't have a good roll of the dice for your comps, but like this other guy over here got lucky, so it all works out. Hasn't really hasn't played out so well. So
okay, fair enough. Fair enough. And yeah, I mean, I think players would love to see something like that. And yeah, the conquest on skirmishes is nice too, because if people are just spam queuing that, maybe they can find some people to queue with.
Yeah.
Next, this is just a super fast, super fast one because
We're in
people
the lightning
ask.
round now?
Yeah, well, not entirely. This is a lightning round, just like a middle of the interview lightning round. Cross faction queues, ever a possibility. I think the reason people ask this is they just want like more of a player pool to be able to find partners.
Yeah, I understand that. I think you just, a lot of times too, maybe your friend is just on the other side and he's online on his alliance and you're on the horde and you want to
Yeah.
play with them. And then, so I think we have a constant balance there, like between letting you play with your friends and preserving this like alliance horde faction divide. So yeah, I think it's not just a PvP decision. I think that's a game-wide decision. I know it's been talked about in past interviews. So I don't have anything really to add to that
Okay.
today, other than just glancing at the top of the ladder, it feels like it's not all one color
Oh yeah, it's
right
not.
now,
Yeah,
which
for
is
sure.
nice. So I think that's at least an improvement over where we have been in previous seasons.
Yeah, no, yeah, there's a pretty even split at the top. There's no doubt about it. I think, yeah, like I said, the only reason people ask is they just want more people to queue with. But obviously,
Totally.
at this point, it's a hard sell with the Horde and the Alliance. But yeah, the next thing I want to talk to you about was rewards in brackets outside of 3v3. So for a long period of time, 3v3 has kind of been like it's been the most prestigious of all the things you can queue for rated content. And things like 2v2, it had like the rank 1 title removed from it. And then RBGs, they do have some rewards, but they're not necessarily unique rewards. Has there been any thought to maybe adding more reasons for people to queue these other brackets and really care about pushing rating in them?
Yeah. So a couple things. One, 2v2, very popular, most popular bracket by far. I think some people really enjoy it and they enjoy playing it and at the highest level of competition. I would not want to add like named gladiator to that bracket, but I think it could get its own. It just hasn't been a priority for us to come up with like a top of the ladder 2v2 reward, but
Okay.
I think that could be fair. And it's also just a thing that it's like, here is something that benefits how many people. It hasn't been a priority for us. But yeah, it's totally worthwhile. I just would not want to use named gladiator for them.
Okay.
RBGs, this may spook from some fan of RBGs. First of all, I love rated battlegrounds. Some of my fondest memories were playing rated battlegrounds with a group. I for years jumped into YOLO RBG groups just to play some RBGs that are a little bit more serious than random battlegrounds. So I really love the format. I feel like we can do better than what we have now, like pre-made 10-man group queuing and lining up against another pre-made 10-man group and playing a 15 to 20 minute match. That has proven to be a very tough system to get high participation in, to get high accurate ratings.
Okay.
Because just think about it, a 2v2 match that at low levels may go on for like most 3 to 5 minutes. Take your 10v10 and it goes, you take 10 people out of the pool and they go for 15-20 minutes. There's just a huge order of magnitude less matches in 10v10.
Yeah.
And so it's been a problem, and I don't necessarily think like, oh, the thing that will really help is if we put some rewards at the highest end of RBGs. Like that's what's gonna get more participation in RBGs. Like I don't really think that's true. Ultimately, what is proven to increase the number of people doing RBGs is if RBGs are a very efficient and effective way to earn conquest and conquest gear and honor. So that is long been the way. But I feel like the thing I think the crowd we're not servicing is the people who want to do battlegrounds. They like battlegrounds. They've moved on from random battlegrounds, but finding a 10-man group is hard for them.
Yeah.
And so I think we can do better. And that's kind of what our eyes are set on is, you know, as much as saying, what if we started fresh with rated battlegrounds? What would we do? How would we design this knowing what we know now? I know people threw out like 6v6 RBGs, like just reduce the player count. Done a lot of experiments personally with 6v6 RBGs. We've done esports events with 6v6 RBGs. Like it needs its own content. I'm pretty confident about that. Like
Its own maps and stuff.
Yeah, like you can't like 6v6 on like a lot of those maps is not that thrilling.
Okay.
So I think it needs its own format, its own game modes, and so there's a lot of content to be made there. And if we did do something like that, I would prefer we outright replace 10v10 with 6v6 than add an additional bracket, because adding an additional bracket to our rated system is just puts more pressure on like which, one more bucket, one less group of players in the other brackets.
Okay.
And hey, we've got to balance out like all these things rewarding evenly. So I don't think that's a great idea. So really, I would say taking a big long look at RBGs for the future, because I love them. I love the format. But I think we can do better than what we have now.
Okay.
And I don't, like I said, I don't think that like adding a name title to the top of the RBG ladder is the solution.
So no Sinister Grand Marshal or Sinister High Warlord?
Wasn't no plans on that right now. Yeah, nothing like that right now.
All right. All right. So moving on from that, I want to kind of go down to some of these like the topics people were really asking about. So let's talk about the season 1 of Shadowlands. So when Shadowlands first came out, you already said it. Participation was at an all-time high, and I mean everyone that was playing felt it. Like you were just getting instant arena games. Everybody wanted to queue up. Rated battlegrounds, 2v2, 3v3. People were reaching like MMR cap within like the first month, which I think it's unheard of. I don't think we've ever seen that before. But as the season progressed, and especially when we got to 905, it felt like the activity on the ladder went down significantly, and it was harder to find games, and the queue times were longer, and it was incredibly difficult at the speaking for like the highest ratings, and even at the lowest ratings as well. It felt like it was really difficult to actually climb rating and actually like push ranks and rating. Have you guys talked about like any ways you could maybe fix that, so like later on in the season there's still reasons for people to want to queue and participate?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the clearest answer here is not have the season go this long.
Okay.
We don't want this is longer than we intended for there to be 9.0, 9.05 to 9.1. This is something we're working very hard. People are really trying to get 9.1 out as fast as possible, but I think that's an important part of it. And so just in general, like this isn't what we would want the length of a season to be. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I've been here for a lot of PvP seasons, and generally like we see like every season plays out in certain phases. Like season launches, everybody's like gearing up for the first like 10 weeks, 12 weeks or so. And that can be all very exciting, and you're getting gear, and then everybody's got their gear and things kind of settle in to kind of this state for a while, and then end of season comes around like the last month or so, and then it's like, okay, we've got to rally, like try to acquire the rating you wanted for this season.
Yeah.
And things pick up. So my expectation is that we will see things pick up here, like when we start to say like, hey, it's getting close to the end of the season. The queues will pick up a bit, and then we'll see in the next patch that will go. I think we can be more aggressive with our inflation numbers for next season than we are right now. That might mean some higher ratings than towards the end of the season than people are accustomed to seeing. But in general, that will put more pressure on people to play more frequently if they want to preserve their spot on the ladder. I generally don't like the idea of decay, rating decay. I know that's been thrown around by the community a number of times. It just kind of, I don't think that's a great experience, that if a player like has to go on a vacation or take a break, let's say 2 to 3 weeks, and then they come back and they've literally lost ground because the game is like, no, I've decided to lower your rating because, you know, you're taking care of your sick mother or something.
Yeah.
I think a world where we reward people for playing, you know, more later in the season is better. I think for what it's worth, inflation is too invisible. It's there, but I think this is a system we should actually make a visible mechanic in the game. And we talked about that, you know, like it, for people who aren't aware, you know, there's all of the ratings are built around this middle ground of 1500, and like you're either, you know, way better than 1500 or you're way worse than 1500, but 1500 is kind of the middle. And what we do is we move that middle over the course of the season, currently at a rate of about 10 rating per week. So second week of the season, you know, first week of the season, it's 1500. Second week of the season, it's 1520. So you slowly move up rating over time. And so if you have a person who doesn't play, they would get bypassed.
Yeah.
Now, it's just not probably significant enough that, you know, people are saying there's a lot of inactivity at the top of the ladder. And it could just be that the inflation isn't high enough to surpass those people. And we can adjust that. And we can adjust that for next season.
Cool.
And so that's the plan right now. But again, I think that is a system that we could make transparent to the players in some way, more akin to the old bonus pool that was in StarCraft 2 back in the day. So that is something we're talking about, but you know, no idea when we would get to that. But because the current system as it is, it works and it does what it is set out to do. We just need to tune it up a bit.
Okay. And one more thing I wanted to ask you about, you know, kind of the season length. Have we ever, like in Legion, we actually saw where there was multiple seasons within a raid tier, and I feel like that kind of worked out great. I'm wondering why that was changed, because it seemed like it was, you know, it was nice. Like you'd have your season within a raid tier, and then it would actually reset, and you have an opportunity to kind of climb up once again, and it felt like it really kept the ladder active.
So 2 reasons, I think. One is something I alluded to before, the broader landscape of the game. Like we have this idea of Mythic Plus seasons, we have this idea of PvP seasons. It was just better for those to be cohesive.
Okay.
And one of the problems that maybe we were forgetting about with the Legion seasons was the gear, and gear being, I don't know if you know this, but people tend to compare the gear from one source to another.
What?
And so what was happening is, you know, it's important for like, you know, last season's gear to be this season's gear to be better than last season's gear. And what we kept running into with Legion was the first, you know, half of the raid tier, the first season, the gladiator, you know, highest end gladiator gear, it wasn't better than the raid gear. And then the second half of the season, it was better than the raid gear. And so there was just this constant angst about like the comparing the PvP gear to the PvE gear, the raid gear, the Mythic Plus gear. And that was just, you know, a constant source of frustration for people. So I think I don't foresee us going back to 2 seasons per raid tier anytime soon. I think the game works better when we just have, you know, all these pieces of content lined up against each other. And I just think it would be, you know, like we said, we just don't want to have seasons that are this length. Okay.
Fair enough. Next kind of topic I wanted to talk about was cooldown. So just like the kind of the burstiness of the game. In Shadowlands, there's a lot of damage there's a lot of cooldowns that classes have and a lot of damage modifiers that classes have. And what ends up happening is players stack them together. And I think it causes 2 problems. So, because defensive cooldowns are also strong, so it causes 2 problems. On the lower end of things, a new player can just die in 1 second to, you know, a mage using combustion or a rep paladin using wings, or, you know, an elemental shaman lining up all his damage, and you can just drop someone in just a second and a half, and then players have no idea what just happened to them because
Mm-hmm.
the damage spikes so hard. And then on the other side of things, when you have the best players playing against each other, and most of your damage comes from these offensive moments like combustion, doubling, tripling your damage.
Mm-hmm.
If they're really good at using their defensive cooldowns, then they survive that moment, and you get into kind of like a stalemate where
Mm-hmm.
you don't really have enough damage outside of your cooldowns to take someone down, and you're
Mm-hmm.
basically just waiting for that one-shot opportunity again. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, the strength of cooldowns and stacking them together right now.
Um, yeah, it's not great. I think what's challenging is we create these buttons. Oftentimes, those buttons are created and have to be like examined in a vacuum of like, does this button read as cool? I press this. What amount of strength does it give me? Um, as much as possible, like we've tried to remove a lot of stacking cooldowns, but they still exist. I think even when we created these covenant abilities, we may have created a few more of them. But I think it's an issue. Generally, I would prefer we could get into a world where like, every class only has 1 2 to 3 minute cooldown as
Yeah.
an option. And there isn't a lot of stacking. I mean, for what it's worth, I don't think we're that far off from that right now, but there's also things like, a trinket or,
Conduit.
a soulbind bonus or something like that. A lot of that sort of thing happens too.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think the other problem is, like you said, if we like tune the game around those one shots, then the rest of the time it feels like you're a wet noodle hitting somebody.
Yeah.
And we don't want that either. So yeah, it is a problem. I think the only the right way to do it, and being an unpruner, this doesn't make me happy, but is to just reduce the number of those like cooldown like buttons,
I,
and that sort of thing. So the other kind of conversation we've had is like, yeah, like thinking about PvP talents that are like, your damage is increased by 10% when Avenging Wrath is on inactive or on cooldown or whatever. So
yeah.
pump up the damage of outside of cooldowns explicitly. So I think those are things we're doing. Right now we've added some PvP mults to a lot of the like filler spells to try to buff up the sustained damage. But yeah, ultimately though, people got to die, and you have to make clips of you one-shotting somebody.
You have to, yeah.
So and the game generally feels more exciting when there are big hits. So just there's a spectrum of what's acceptable
Yeah.
scale, and then we just have to find it.
Cool. I just wanted to quickly say one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I noticed in 9.1 is some abilities actually got buffed. So Frostbolt, for example, I'm really excited about this as a Frost Mage.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they tuned down the PP talent Deep Shatter, so like that got tuned down, so like your shatters are a little bit less, but they buffed Frostbolt just damage in PvP. So
Mm-hmm.
like your filler spell Frostbolt is now going to actually feel like it's a bit more significant when you press it. Is there any thoughts to maybe doing this for a lot of the quote unquote filler spells
Yes.
for classes?
Yep, I would say yes. I'd say we should look for more opportunities to do that. Kind of held off doing it too much, but that's something we're opening the gates on a bit here in 9.1. So
Cool.
there may be more of that coming.
All right. Well, I'm not going to complain about that. That sounds great. Can kind of double back to let's see here. What's another topic that we got?
Well, there are two topics I would really like to make
Sure.
we got to. One is we got 9.1. Is it done?
All right.
I think Minpoke. I don't know.
Minpoke, yeah.
I brutal. Did I make that? I did horrible.
Not too bad. Don't worry. You're okay.
He asked that question of like, should we expect more changes? I would say the state of this, it is, you probably won't see any more new like PvP talents coming to 9.1, but you will see changes to the existing ones. So, as a result of our, playtest here in just a couple minutes, we'll be getting feedback. We'll all be playing with them. And I'm sure we'll learn a lot. And so there will be changes to the classes still, and PvP specific changes, but it's unlikely that you'll see like a whole new talent appear
Okay.
at this point. The other big issue is mind control. Um, the mind control bug issue. I just wanted to bring this up because I know it's a very hot button issue in the community, and this feeling like, why are we ignoring this problem? We aren't ignoring the problem, I think, is what I want to stress. This is a very difficult bug for us. Mind control is kind of a complicated spell for the game. We have already committed a pretty significant amount of time, very good programmers taking a look at it. We're going to continue to spend time. There are people looking at it now. It is tricky. It is tricky because part of the problem is just reproducing it consistently internally can be a challenge. The bug is kind of caused by some combination of lag and timing mismatch between clients and servers. And it's operating at the lowest level of like movement code for the game. And so I just kind of wanted to just, step out here and say, like, we know this is a problem. We're not happy about it. We're working very hard on it. Thank you for everybody's patience about this bug. And, we're working really hard to repair it, but it has proven to be very difficult to fix, to reproduce, diagnose, all those things. So.
Well, I have to say, appreciate you saying that. We just got out in front of that one because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you is, we got a few minutes left here, but in terms of like communication and, players giving feedback, is there a place that's best? Because, some people think like, oh, they only look at Twitter or they only look at, the forums or, they only look at Reddit or whatever it may be.
You only watch Venruki stream.
Yeah, exactly. They only listen to streamers, but I know that's not true. But I was wondering, is there a particular place that people, you would suggest that they give feedback, or is it just kind of like a mix of everywhere?
It is a bit of a mix of everywhere. I know that may not be a satisfying answer, and there's a lot of players. And I think communicating with them is very important. And our community team does a very good job trying to reach out to all of them and let them know that they're heard and feel engaged. But really, we pay attention to Warcraft devs, the Twitter handle. We check out the forums. Our quality assurance people are always looking at the forums, especially for bug reports, entering those bugs, and we get those into a system. It isn't necessarily the case that the way the team works is like go to the forums looking for bugs. Okay, hey, that's what I'm going to work on today. I'm going to fix this bug. It's generally that someone finds those bugs, enters them into our bug tracking system, and then the developers are working off of that. So
okay.
And there are a lot of things. There's new work and new content for us to create. There's old bugs for us to fix, and we try to prioritize as best we can. But really, for folks out there who want to get their voice heard, certainly sending messages to Warcraft devs, posting in our forums is always very valuable. And and as far as the streamers are concerned, or the big YouTube personalities, I think everyone who works on this game are fans of the game, and they're fans of a lot of the content creators out there. And so when people make points that really resonate with the player base, that sort of stuff gets forwarded to us a lot. So cool. We always see things that are really resonating with players and your fans, and so we kind of keep abreast of those as well. So I would say the only thing that doesn't work is yelling into a pillow. Like that just it helps you. But I will never hear it. So,
it helps me sometimes, but
yeah, that's the only type of feedback we never see. But all these different avenues to contact us, they work. It's just, there's a lot of feedback coming in. It's hard to make every single individual person feel heard. But being on this stream right now is a part of that. It's just trying to let everybody know that we are listening and we're working as hard as we can to make a great game for you.
Well, I speak on behalf of everyone when I say, thank you very much for coming on, chatting with us. We are at that 1 hour mark. I was wondering, can we do like a really quick, like 1 minute kind of lightning round for some topics that I had?
Sure.
All right. So super fast. PvP trinkets and trinket balance. Is this something that's being looked at all? Between badge, insignia, and emblem, I'd say emblem is the one that gets picked the most by far, and it's the defensive option.
Yeah, we don't want the defensive option to be best. So yes, we probably will look at that. We think there's been talks about reducing it.
Okay. Another quick question I have for you guys: is there any way we can get a list of like PvP specific changes? Because there's sometimes a spell will get changed. Example I gave you was at the start of Battle for Azeroth, Ray of Frost and Glacial Spike had some changes on it, and I think there's other abilities like this where talents are tuned down in PvP, and there's no real way of seeing that. Is there any way we could get like an official list?
Yes. I could talk about getting that. I know that the PvP malts, I feel like we did the tech work to make them data mineable for the sites. I don't know that they take advantage of that. I'd have to verify that that's true. I don't want to throw any of the data mining sites under the bus or anything. But I did try at one point, I remember trying to make the effort to make those values open for them.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll get a tweet or two if I'm wrong and they're not available. So that would be one thing. The other is, a lot of the tooltips update in the game. So hopefully you can see them there. But I'm not intending to just put all the work on you guys. I think we could work on some way to make this more obvious for you, but I'm not quite sure. I'd have to work with our community team to find out what would work best.
All right. Well, like I said, we're at that 1 hour mark. Maybe we could do this again sometime, but I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us. I really appreciate it. Also want to thank everyone that submitted questions for this, because I got 500 questions or something like that to ask, and this is kind of what it came down to. So thanks again. And I also just want to say, if you guys want to go check out some of the 9.1 PvP talents, this is your opportunity to give feedback on them. So you should hop on the public test realm as we're going to be doing a play with the developers. I know I'm going to be doing it. And you're going to be playing as well, right?
I will be. I'll be there.
What class are you playing? I have to ask.
I'm going to be on Havoc, I think, today.
Havoc Demon Hunter? All right.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the arena.
All right, thanks, Elliot. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.